the latest news pala, parang construction to resume sa Baguio. Ang Baguio projects.
I think we're complete. Mr. Sobrano, you're on mute. Okay, hold on.
There.
There you go.
Okay.
So, 5 minutes. Naka-live na ba tayo? Naka-standby na tayo sa Inquirer?
So we are calling from different places of the country.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to the second installment of Onboard, presented by Philippine Daily Inquirer and Icon Executive Asia. My name is Pat Soyo from Icon Executive Asia, and I will be your host for this live stream event. To the viewers who are watching for the first time, Onboard is a free online conference where you get a front row seat to see how business executives decide on the fate of their organizations, especially during a time of crisis. Our main focus for today's discussion is the necessary future-proofing of the real estate industry. But before I turn the show over to our exceptional business moderators, we would like to thank the following sponsors for making this online boardroom discussion possible. Thank you to Medicard Philippines, Ortigas Land, MegaWorld Corporation, Federal Land Incorporated, Inquirer.net, Cebu Land Masters Incorporated. We'd also like to extend our gratitude to the organizations that supported us in this project. Thank you to Cebu Land Masters, Federal Land, Inquirer.net, Inquirer Property, Colliers International, Icon Executive Asia, Wong & Bernstein Advisory Group, and Shoppertainment Live. This onboard discussion will feature a powerhouse panel that includes business moderators and speakers with decades worth of corporate experience in the real estate industry. Let me introduce you to our first business moderator, Tech Samaniego, editor of the property section and AVP for special projects and supplements of the Philippine Daily Inquirer. She has been with Inquirer since 2000 and began her writing career as a contributor for several sections such as Science and Health, Property, and Business. Since her appointment as property editor back in 2016, Tech has introduced new themes, columns, and creative executions to provide more interesting and more comprehensive content for the section. Good afternoon, Tech.
Good afternoon, Pat, and good afternoon, everyone. In last April's forum, we discussed about the state of the property sector amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Together with Colliers and Wong and Bernstein, we tried to analyze this unprecedented scenario and tried to thresh out strategies that could help the industry to better deal with the impact of COVID. Meanwhile, in this afternoon's forum, we hope to again enlighten and inform our viewers and property stakeholders on the things that can be done to better equip and prepare the industry in these trying times. Highly aware that this may not be the last pandemic or crisis that we will face, we need to take actions that will help not only our sellers or our brokers or our developers, but one that could help actually future proof an industry that allows individuals to live their dreams, provides livelihood to millions of Filipinos, and helps steer the economy to higher grounds. Thank you, Pat.
All right, thank you so much, Tech. So, for our second business moderator, Joey Roy Bondo is the Senior Research Manager at Colliers International Philippines. He covers office, residential, retail, leisure, and industrial segments. He conducts macroeconomic analysis and regularly assesses the impact of economic growth to the real estate sector. Our speaker also handles client engagement through market overview presentations to equity analysts, property investors, and real estate firms. His reports have been featured on national news programs such as CNN Philippines, Market Edge with Kathy Young, ANC, Bloomberg Philippines, and Business World Live. They've also been featured in international and national dailies such as the Philippine Daily Inquirer, Philippine Star, Malaya, Business World, Wall Street Journal, South China Morning Post, Bloomberg, and Nikkei Asia. He's been regularly invited as a research speaker by real estate platforms and industry groups such as Manila Real Estate Boards, Philippine Association of Realty Appraisers, Real Estate Brokers Association of the Philippines, Lamudi, and Hopler. Good afternoon, Joey.
Good afternoon, Pat. Thank you to Inquirer. Thanks for inviting me and the Colliers International Philippines to this very interesting webinar, again mounted by Inquirer. It's just a little uncertain right now, what we're seeing in the market. And as Tech mentioned, these are unprecedented times. And also in my case, this is a little strange because, I'm used to being on the other side of the fence, being grilled and asked some really tough questions. But now I get to play a different role and be a moderator. But again, I'm really looking forward to what our guests from the property developer side as well as the architects will be discussing today. And, I'm really looking forward to an insightful, lively, and interesting discussion. So hope we can have some recommendations and insights that we can provide both to investors and end users and help the property development sector navigate through these uncertain times.
Okay, thank you, Joey. So now that we have introduced our business moderators, I'll turn this over now to Tech and Joey for the introduction of the speakers. Tech, Joey?
Thanks again, Pat. So for today's onboard session, we've invited some of the industry's most seasoned and respected sources whose insights we actually believe could help enlighten us about how the COVID-19 pandemic could actually affect the real estate sector over the short, medium to long term. We have first Mr. Tomas F. Mirasol. He is currently the President and COO of Federal Land, President of Horizon Land, as well as Federal Property Management. Tom has more than 28 years of management experience in the real estate industry, handling leadership roles in strategic planning, retail operations and development, residential and office project development, business development, commercial operations, sales, and marketing. So without further ado, here is Mr. Tom Mirasol. Good afternoon, Tom.
Hi, Tech, Joey, Pat. So federal land, for those people who are not aware, we are part of the T family-led GT Metrobank conglomerate. Of course, part of the conglomerate is GT Capital, Metrobank, Toyota, AXA, just to name a few. We have been in real estate development for 47 years. We have projects all over Manila, BGC, Makati, Marikina, Cavite, and Cebu. We're also quite fortunate to have a number of foreign partners on many of our projects. And some examples of our latest projects, the Grand Hyatt Hotel and the 2 residential towers that go with it, the Seasoned Residences at PGC, the Grand Midori in Ortigas, and Mikasa in the Bay Area. All in all, we have over 30 projects live at this point. This is a very exciting time for everybody, for real estate as well. And I'm looking forward to hearing what everyone else has to say on the panel, especially some old friends of mine, emphasis on the old, and you know who you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. And then we also have on board right now Mr. Jose Soberano. He is the chairman, president, and CEO of Cebu Land Masters, which was established in 2003. He worked for the Ayala Group of companies for over 23 years in various management capacities in Ayala Investment, Bank of the Philippine Islands, and Ayala Land. He also served as president of the Rotary Club of Cebu, was president of the Chamber of Real Estate Builders Association, and is currently the chairman of the board of Center for Industrial Technology and Enterprise, a socially oriented institution that offers technical training to less privileged youth. Again, welcome, Mr. Joe Soberano.
Thank you very much, Tech. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's nice to be able to see old friends again. I'm with Cebu Land Masters, of course, which I founded in 2003, as you mentioned. And we are basically focused in Visayas and Mindanao. And our entry point normally is to put up residential housing projects on key cities that we go into. And so far, we have about 15 key cities now that we are doing some development, and also with completed projects. And once we see that the market for other kinds of development is there, like condos or residential condominiums or mixed-use development, we also partake on those. That's why we are in Davao with a mix of projects, but we also have a township project we call the Davao Digital Town. The Davao Global Township, and then we are in Cebu. Basically, that's where we started. So all told, we have about 30 projects that's ongoing now under construction, and we also have our sites on other projects like industrial estates and the hospitality sector as well, which we are, by the way, operating already our first hotel, which is Citadine Cebu City.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Soberano. Also joining us this afternoon is architect Amado De Jesus Jr., who has been specializing in green and healthy buildings and homes for more than 40 years now. He's the founding chairman of the Green Architecture Movement of the United Architects of the Philippines, the initiator and incumbent vice chairman of the Philippine Green Building Initiative, a green building rating body composed of building professional organizations. He's also the Philippine representative to the ASEAN Energy Awards Board of Judges for 7 years and was chairman from 2005 to 2006. He currently promotes the principles of green architecture and Inquirer property through his column Green Architrends. Attorney Architect Amado.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. First, I want to thank the Inquirer and, of course, the organizers of this forum, which makes it possible for all of us to meet somehow, at least electronically. This defies somehow what the COVID-19 is trying to do, which is break us all apart. Somehow we are still united with forums like this. Well, as you have heard, I have been trying to espouse green design, and I'm glad somehow that the health issues now are coming to the front because of the COVID-19. People have not seen the relation between health issues and the places of where we live and work. And that is what green design is trying to promote, that green buildings are healthy buildings. And somehow all this discussion, when it started reaching our shores, has been all about the issues of health and how we can improve and avoid plague and how we can continue to live healthy lives. So on the good side, it's a wake-up call for us to take note, take a fresh look at what this green design is all about. It had to take us we had to hit the wall first, maybe before we realized that aside from the few exemplary developers like what we have today this afternoon, many people are just doing business as usual, the way they design, they construct, and the way they market these products. This is now a major issue, and I hope that what we're undergoing, although painful as it is, economically, physically, and many other affected issues, they will take a new look and see that we should look at this in a different light. Good afternoon.
Okay, thank you, Architect Amado, for that interesting introduction. Now we move on to our last speaker. Mr. Joel Luna is the founder and principal of Joel Luna Planning and Design, a master planning and architectural design firm which he started in 2017. He's a registered architect, environmental planner, and a certified Verde professional with over 30 years of design experience covering the fields of architecture, planning, urban design, and design management. His expertise in the field of mixed-use development planning and township development planning. He has over 26 years of experience with the Ayala Land Incorporated as chief architect and head of innovation and design, where he led the design effort and driven the planning strategy for all of the company's products. Good afternoon, Architect Joel.
Good afternoon, Joey. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for Philippine Daily Inquirer for allowing this forum to happen. It's good to see familiar faces in the panel to talk about a very challenging topic. It's quite intimidating, future-proofing the new normal. It was hard enough to future-proof the old normal. But anyway, my particular fascination is the planning of townships, cities, and places, which is particularly challenged right now because the current pandemic and the economic and social impact in its wake brings a lot of uncertainty. And so the questions in our mind are things like what happens once the ECQ is lifted? What is this new normal that we're talking about? And how will markets behave? And how will businesses respond? It poses a particular challenge to us architects and planners because there is a spatial and physical dimension to the spread of contagious diseases. The fact that social distancing is an immediate response to mitigate the spread of the pandemic raises some valid questions on how we should design our spaces. So there are questions going around even of the relevance of cities and of densities and of high density living in the context of COVID-19. But more fundamentally, the pandemic highlighted many things that are deficient in our society. As in most crises, they reveal vulnerabilities in our systems. While we have seen a few bright spots of individuals, organizations, and companies who have stepped up, it entailed a lot of heroism. So the question is, how can we create an environment that is sufficiently resilient in times of crisis that we don't need to rely entirely on heroics for survival? So architecture and urban planning alone will not have the answer to this question, but because it's so complex, but we can help frame the problem, because I think that's what architects do best. We frame the problem. Thank you.
Okay, now that we have introduced our onboard panelists, I think we're now more than ready to start this exciting discussion. To our viewers, feel free to join the conversation and ask questions, and we will try to accommodate as many questions as we can in the second half of our program. Okay, as our team suggests, we are here to find out really on what exactly this new normal is amid the COVID-19 pandemic and how the Philippine real estate industry defines this new normal. We believe that in understanding this, we will be able to somehow find ways to effectively future-proof our developments and our cities. But in order to do that, do we really need to go back to the drawing table and redo everything that we've done pre-COVID times? Or do we really recalibrate strategies? Right now, I think our panelists will help us answer that. So to start off, I would like to pose this question first to Tom. Tom, what do you think is the impact of COVID-19 on your business? And so far, what's helping cushion the blow of the COVID-19 pandemic in your business?
Thanks, Tech. I guess the impact on our business, I mean, real estate, is probably no different from that from just every other industry out there. Construction operations are suspended. Mall operations are suspended. So basically, what we are doing as a company is we're taking care of things on the back end. You know, adjusting our plans for the future, making sure that we've got the right systems in place where we can make sure that we're operating as effectively as we can as the ECQ and GCQ restrictions are gradually lifted. No? Now, let me say very quickly in this that the approach that the country has taken to being very cautious about addressing the potential spread of the virus is absolutely the right thing to do. Now, even though it does hurt the industry, I think no one would disagree that taking a very cautious approach is the smartest thing to do. Now, in terms of what is helping cushion this impact on us as well, on a very macro level, the fundamentals of the country still seem to be quite good. Now, for as long as the ECQ and GCQ don't last for unusually long, I personally don't think that it's going to take us very long to get back from where we started, with a few changes to the way things get done, of course. The other thing that's sort of helping the entire industry is, we've been getting a lot of guidance and guidelines from the various government departments, which this is very useful for us in our ability to try to plan our way forward. There has been no absence of or no lack of communication, so that clears up a whole lot of things. I'm also very thankful for the fact that we've been able to collaborate quite a lot with government departments and agencies and industry groups, so that we can share our own ideas with each other and with the government on what we can do to make sure that we come out of this as strong as possible.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Now I would like to hear Mr. Soberano or Sir Joe's reply to this. I'm quite curious on the impact of COVID-19 in the property sector in the Vismin area. In terms of scale, Joe, would you say that it's the same, highly the same, or significantly different from what Metro Manila is experiencing right now?
It's still basically the same experience that we are having as in Metro Manila, maybe to a smaller extent, no? Because if you look at Metro Manila as really a metropolis, we do have metropolitan areas here in Cebu and in Davao. But there are also certain things that we are able to do here in Bismin, like construction that are allowable by certain LGUs. But it's not really more of what we can or cannot do, because I see a lot of interaction within the community in terms of reaching out and helping people in need, no? And basically trying to extend a helping hand to the different publics that we are engaged with. And I find that a very significant development in terms of people cooperating and working together for a common cause. Because this is what is more prevalent for us at this time, you know, that business groups or developers who may have the capacity to help out the community and affected people and able to support frontliners and the like would be very engaging for him for them, and that is exactly what we are witnessing right now. Now, the cushion that we always have is the developers' internal makeup. No, may it be his financial condition, and we feel that in Sibulan Masters, while we have been always financially prudent in the way we do things, have carried us very well here in this time of crisis. And we feel that we still want to move some more, but again, there is a little caution in the air, no? And that's why we become very focused on projects that we feel that will still have that very strong demand. No, that's why in Bismin, I would like to believe that the strongest product line remains to be the residential house and lot packages. No? Even up to this time, we hear a lot of these inquiries and people really getting excited because at no better time are people really wanting to have new homes. And these are people who have still the disposable income and wanting to have some change, especially in the face of this health crisis that we are facing. And that to me is a positive sign. And we do want to take a look and review on all the projects that we have lined up. But definitely what's gonna happen is to have a real focus on those that we feel will recover faster than other product lines.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Soberano. I think that's very reassuring for your Vismin investors, developers like you, having a cautiously optimistic view on this. Now, let me get the views of our architects. I want to know, can proper design, planning, and construction of projects help cushion the impact of a crisis or pandemic? And has there been any point in history wherein you saw a city that was properly planned and developed being able to cushion the impact of a previous crisis? Architect Amado?
Well, yes, of course. One of the famous changes or cities that have gone through change that I can think of is the one that urban planner Haussmann did for Paris, which when he was commissioned by Napoleon, I think it was Napoleon III. In fact, the first thing he did, because Paris was not, it's not exactly how we view Paris right now. Right at that time, it was full of crowded streets, meandering, and the first thing he did was to create large streets and avenues like what we see now. And then he started putting a lot of, and the sewage and water system was also improved, obviously related to health. And he was the first one who put light into the streets of Paris. That's why it's called the City of Lights. And then, of course, he was responsible for a lot of imposing buildings like the opera. But more than that, the idea was really to improve the city conditions because of the plague that was in Europe at that time. And, and mentioning also the plague, like tuberculosis, when it was first discovered, there was no cure. It sounds familiar, like what we have with COVID-19 now. The cure then was to come up with buildings that were full of light and natural ventilation, which up to now is still very much practiced in hospitals, because they notice that patients recover faster when they are close to nature, when you have these basic elements in place. So it is true that we are coming up with new ways now to go about dealing with this pandemic. There are many other cases in history where, in fact, what did Corbusier said about the house? He said that the house is not fit for living until it has enough light and air. So this is I think the prevailing message that we are dealing with now: health issues, and we can learn from a lot. And probably we'll come up with a new generation of buildings to deal with COVID-19, just as those early planners did. We are coming out now with more spaces. In Tokyo, they have a very interesting way of planning their cities, which they did earlier. They call it the fire stops. This was done in very crowded cities in Japan, where they did not put the buildings all clustered together. The idea was to stop the fire. It was meant for fire, but as we have now, the compact and densely populated areas can benefit from such a strategy. Somebody was mentioning about our slum areas, which are so compact, and it's impossible to implement social distancing. So if we were to plan cities with more spaces in between, probably it will be not only good for the people, but also to handle also virus and cases like this. So we can learn a lot from the past, and we can come up with new ways to solve this problem we have.
Okay, thanks for that very insightful response, Architect Amado, peppered with some historical and geographical viewpoints. May we hear from Architect Joel? What's your stand on this?
Yeah, well, just to add to what Architect Amado has mentioned, I think history will shows us a lot of examples of how architecture and planning responded after major crises. Apart from the Paris redevelopment by Haussmann, there was also the replanning of Chicago after the Great Fire, wherein they enforced stricter building standards. They basically banned timber construction in the city. Apart from that, because the fire in Chicago allegedly started when a cow knocked a lamp in a barn, and that started the blaze that spread throughout the city. That prompted the city to enforce stricter zoning, because you would imagine what a cow was doing in the city of Chicago during that time. So that was the start of certain planning as well as building standards. And you see it all over. The San Francisco earthquake in 1906, similarly, it prompted new building regulations. Cholera epidemics in Europe and in the US triggered the improvement of drainage and sewer systems. And of course, modern day zoning is a response to the pollution and disease brought about by the early industrial revolution. And not too long ago, probably you would remember the Yolanda disaster led to stricter regulations regarding shoreline setbacks and to anticipate storm surges. So you see all of this, how building technology and the planning of buildings and cities are improving as a result of a response to major crises. But what we find is that cities are very vulnerable to calamities and crises. And this is because of the concentration of people and concentration of economic activity in a given location. Cities have an inherent multiplier effect. They multiply economic productivity, they multiply efficiency, innovation, and it is because of this concentration. The downside is that this concentration of people and activity also amplifies the potential damage from calamities such as disease or natural disasters. But what is something to be optimistic about is that typically it is also within cities that you will find clues to solving its own problems. So, the discovery of germ theory couldn't have happened if it weren't for the data gathered by a few doctors in London who was studying the outbreak at that time. It was it was the preponderance of data that can only happen in cities that led to the development of cures for some of these plagues that were happening in cities.
Okay, thank you, Architect Joel. Interesting how you were able to relate that to a Philippine experience. Now, speaking of Philippines, of course, for our developers here, including Cebu Landmasters, Mr. Soberano, we were mentioning the measures and innovations here. And now, with this new normal that we are seeing now, do you think your projects are somewhat ready for the new normal that we will likely see going forward?
We are really evaluating the situation very closely. And we have to see which projects we have to focus on. And one thing that I can see that has continues to be of real interest is really the housing side of real estate. And this is shown really by what has happened now. And one of the root causes of people getting infected are really their situation. No? They're locked in an area that's so congested. And there is no better time for them to realize that there will be a need to have a home and to disperse. And that's one thing that we will continue to really pursue. No? Even up to now, even right now, while we are facing this crisis, we are doing, of course, our connectivity efforts with our buyers and even our brokers and sellers, such that we are showing to them, even virtually, or the opportunity for them to review what we have in the pipeline and feel that that is the opportunity that they should go for. And when we see that really shaping up very, very closely. No? Now, we are into other products as well, but at the same time, what we are really basically doing is continuing to plan them, until such time that we are ready to make the decision whether to launch or construct. But up to the point of planning, I think that's very important for us, and to tweak and do adopt certain changes that will attune ourselves to the present needs, especially with the present realities that we are experiencing. And it's important for us to gauge also how things will shape up. And we can only be so certain as what the market can see in terms of what we have on the table. That's why I could also feel that our company is pretty much fortunate, in a way that we have 8 pipeline hospitality or hotel projects. I was just imagining if we were already operating them now. It's good that we are only down to 1 yet, because these are projects that either in planning or under construction. But if they were to be completed 3, 4, 5 years from now, I'm sure there's going to be some reversal to. There's going to be a new normal that will come up, no? And we always feel that optimism that eventually people will have to travel and appreciate going out, and this will not just be a foreign tourist thing, but it becomes even a domestic part of people wanting to travel and stay in hotels. No? And then the thing also of industrial estates. I think this is the best time really to think very hard on them, because you will see that we need employment generators. And we see the strong need to have manufacturing companies really operating here. This could be multinationals, and we have lower costs. And this cuts a lot of our supply chain requirements, which many of us are in need here in our country. So space becomes a question, where we replace them. Because, for example, in Cebu, we practically run out of space. MEPS there in Mactan is already filled up, and there's even a possibility that part of them will have to go because there's going to be a planned new runway. No, if that really happens, where will we put all of this export processing zone? And we're saying that there are opportunities to really make reclamation projects happen. And these are going to be places not too far away from the center. It's not too far away from the city, and that will really liven up the whole thing. Manufacturing, one thing that we need here in the economy of Bismin, and getting employment, and you can put even a mixed-use flavor into that. No? So there's going to be a lot of exciting things. So these are things that we have to prepare for, because while we are looking at a new normal now, that new normal could also change for another normal. No? It could even be a reversal of what we have been experiencing in the past.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. That was such an insightful thoughts from you. Tom, in the case of federal land, you're known to have made use of the latest technological advancement to ensure the integrity of your buildings. But would you say that dealing with this new normal entails an entirely different approach? And if so, how would you define this new normal? Is it something that can still possibly be done in your completed projects?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. My point of view may not be sort of aligned with a lot of other people for this particular thing. I think if someone was marooned on a desert island just before COVID happened, and they came back to the Philippines 1 year later, it's not like they would not recognize, the country. They would not recognize Metro Manila. I think the future will look mostly like what it did, 3 or 4 months ago. Now, certainly there are many aspects that can adopt and probably will adopt for the so-called new normal. To put this in perspective, if there was a vaccine which was available today and everyone could get vaccinated, the amount of change that you might see in the way real estate is developed or the way our infrastructure is done may not change very much at all, right? But there are many factors or many aspects of life which can change, and there will be a balance. So it's going to be about better medicine. It's going to be about infrastructure of buildings and transportation. It's going to be real estate. it's going to be societal norms, right? All of these things have the potential to adapt, and the one that adapts first and most will take some of the pressure off of the other, of the other aspects. So we will find our balance, just like every other country will find its own. Um, Now, I don't think people should be too worried about, what the future is going to be, what the new normal is going to be. I know it's very difficult to think outside of the COVID situation which we have right now. So uh, I don't think we should be making uh, very, very long-term decisions, assuming that this is the situation that's going to be here forever. It'll be here, I don't know. Uh, the medical experts will tell us how long, but we will find our way, to a future which I think we will all be able to recognize not very different from today. Now, what will change? Uh, Density in office buildings may change, right? The way layouts are done will probably change. I think a lot of companies, rather than having all of its employees in one building, they may be looking at spreading out the organization to several different cities, just to be absolutely careful. Um, I was mentioning before that there's this phenomenon of marriage counselors all of a sudden being inundated with calls. So I know there is a huge market segment out there of wives who want to find a uh, a second condominium unit to banish their husbands to whenever the next quarantine happens. Yeah, that's the way I see the future.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mirasol, for that very interesting comment. And it's interesting also to find out that there's a new demand driver in the market. But we heard the side of the developers, right? Cebu Land Masters and the federal land. But now let me ask the architects, and let me put them on the spot. Let me start with architect Joel. What is this new normal that we are seeing, especially on your side, on the side of the architects? And in addressing this new normal, will this be a major role of architects and urban planners? And is it just a concept, or will this be a significant factor in promoting or future proofing developments?
Uh, well, I think what people are referring to as a new normal is not likely to be an instantaneous event. We will probably it will probably follow a process of transitioning into a stable state that can take several months, no, maybe years, just like what Tom was mentioning earlier. For instance, prior to COVID, the economy was in the real estate sector had over 10 years of rapid growth, so it was fairly robust at that time. Then came COVID, and severe market contraction happened. So the demand for many products actually dried up. Not all of the products within the real estate sector contracted all at the same time. There were some that continued to survive, logistics, for instance, but some dried up entirely. Now, maybe one possibility is upon lifting of the ECQ and into the near term, we will probably see some gradual and cautious behavior. Again, just like what Joe and Tom were saying. So probably no new project launches, and then the moves will be more opportunistic, trying to build up liquidity and minimizing risk. Both consumers and developers may go for the less risky and less capital intensive ventures. And then, of course, there will be some who would try to retrofit their products, try to repackage them so that they can release some of this inventory in the marketplace. So there will be some economic activity at that near-term stage, but it won't be at the level we experienced, say, a year ago. So what we will probably see is more of a tempered activity. On the design side, during that early period, probably it would be more tactical, such as how to promote social distancing in public spaces, how to design those things, a review of building specifications, because there will be a lot of consumer concern about making sure that places are safe. Reviewing material specifications, and definitely on the property management side of it, a review of procedures. On the policy side, this will also be a period of review and calibration, and hopefully of setting new standards. And during that early period, maybe there would be a few developers, a few daring stalls who will try to seize new space and offer unique products, trying to address niche markets. And we have seen this in previous crises. Then over the medium term, we'll probably see the coalescence of these new market preferences that will result in actual new products. So it's no longer tactical, but probably more strategic offerings. So what will be the shape and form of future shopping centers, of hotels, of office spaces, of manufacturing places, and of condominiums? They'd probably be, there will be more deliberate design approaches of public spaces in general. It is interesting to recall that some new products actually emerged from a crisis, like after the global financial crisis in 2008, we saw the surge of affordable condominiums happening in the CBD. Of course, there were many other factors that led to that, but what you can see is there's a lot of innovation that happens precisely because the crisis necessitated it. Similarly, the BPO industry happened shortly after the Asian financial crisis. So these kinds of events, the shocks in the system, has a way of triggering innovation. So the question would be for us is what would be the types of products that we can see or help evolve out of the market transformation that is likely to happen.
Thank you for that, Joel. For Architect Amado de Jesus, sir, do you believe that this latest buzzword in the real estate sector or in the country right now, which is the new normal, do you really think that it's something that is for real? And is it here to stay? If so, what elements should we add or what measures should our developer friends should put in place to ensure that projects are future-proof?
Okay, thank you. There are always two ways to look at things, the way I see it. Just like the sides of a coin, I'd like to think of it as the good, the negative, and the positive side. It's like when somebody tells you, I have good news and bad news. Of course, they want to hear the bad news first. Okay, I would think of it as the way things are going in this with the landscape, in our landscape of COVID-19. If it continues to be, and nobody can tell how long it will be, we might have a economic downturn. That means people cannot afford bank rates. People will not be borrowing. Of course, they don't have a job. So the repercussion there to me is there will be less construction. This is on the. Although I've heard our experts just now, the positive side. I'm glad that they are very optimistic. I like to think of it only on the other side. Downturn. That means more retrofitting jobs for architects, developers, contractors. Smaller homes will be built. People may not be able to afford big projects. And correct me if I'm wrong, this is how I feel, because this is how I feel the trend is going. On the positive side, there are new developments, new products that are coming up. There are now what they call the automated touchless technologies. We already know about automatic doors that close and open. There are now voice-activated elevators being developed. Hands-free light switches. Cell phone, it's not yet done popularly. Cell phone controlled hotel room entry in public areas, public places. Normally it was the key and then the card, but you still have to touch. This one with your cell phone you can. And then they're coming up with antibacterial materials that can easily be sanitized. A lot of this technology because of COVID-19. This will continue. I'm sure these things will not stop the minute we find a vaccine. So on the other side, there are other things like um, adaptive technology using a lot of structures. They're doing that now. I understand they had used the PICC for quarantine areas. Our building should be more flexible to handle calamities like this so that in an instant we can come up with ways to address problems. We have modular construction, again, an old system that is coming into popularity again. There's another interesting aspect here that I am probably sure you're aware of, the developers are preparing, which is the multi-generational homes. I've seen this in Singapore, and they are now considering housing in the same building or maybe in the same house several generations with, of course, their own private areas, probably with some common areas that they can share at specific times. We now have the grandfathers, grandparents, together with the children and the grandchildren, and so on. This is going to be a trend that is going, especially probably in Asia, where we have a lot of old senior people still part of the family. There are many other trends that are going on, aside from technical things that also affects the overall character of the communities where we live. That's I think the trend, the good and the bad that we have to watch out for. But there are new trends that we are coming up with, and I'm glad they are as we're going out of the COVID box. You might think our imagination should go out of it and not be sunk with what we've been doing in the past. There are good news and bad news about this. That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much to our speakers. Those were very interesting insights from our panelists. We can see a lot of questions now coming in the comment section, but we will have to take a quick 3-minute break before we continue with our online boardroom discussions. So stay tuned for more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you again to our speakers. We really got a lot of good insights from our speakers. And for everyone's reference, this is made possible by our sponsors. So please kindly a short word or a short AVP from our sponsors. Thank you. Once again, we would like to thank the following sponsors: Medicard Philippines, Ortigas Land, Mega World Corporation, SunTrust Properties Incorporated, and Cebu Land Masters Incorporated. We would also like to acknowledge our organization partners: Cebu Land Masters Incorporated, Federal Land Incorporated, Inquirer.net, Inquirer Property, Colliers International, Icon Executive Asia, Wong and Bernstein Advisory Group, and Shop Entertainment Live. Okay, now we're gonna move on to our last segment. That's going to be the second part of the panel. I will now turn this over to our business moderators. Once again, let's welcome Tech and Joey. Tech, Joey.
Welcome back, everyone. This is the second half of our onboard discussion, and we've had a very interesting discussion with our guests for this webinar. But one of the more interesting questions that we got, and let me ask this to our developers. Pre-COVID, we've seen the popularity of integrated communities, the estates, not just in Metro Manila, but even in areas outside of Metro Manila. Now, having seen the usefulness of these projects, especially during pandemic, do we now see a greater popularity of this integrated communities, estates moving forward? Will now this be the new normal in terms of property development? Let me start with Mr. Sobrano.
Uh, that's a very likely scenario. We can only really try to feel it and fit into the equation, no? Because definitely when you talk of integrated development, you have that mixed use character in it. So the elements of a residential component is mixed with say a retail, with a supermarket, and you have offices there. So that can augur well in a scenario where people are pretty much confined, and they could see that that need becoming more pronounced, because you want to enjoy within an area that is where you can move around. And the same is true on the integrated side of development, no? But I guess the point there is that the past without, or the pre-COVID, as you were pointing out earlier, is now carried to a point where we have this crisis, and how that can be moved forward. Now, I think the basic element that makes it very significant for developers is that you need to have a land bank. You know, I mean, it's a matter of positioning what is of good potential, and you see a possible appreciation, because that's the beauty of real estate. You have it, and it's not going to deteriorate, and you can play along with a phasing program. So that provides a flexibility to you. Okay, let's say you have this 20-hectare land bank in the heart of the city, or it's off a bit, it's in a suburb area, but there is a strong potential on it. You may have master planned it, no, but there is definitely enough flexibility for you, no, to do whatever you want, and you have now to appreciate what has this crisis brought into you in terms of new learnings, right? And then you make some adjustments, and then apply these new learnings to what you have. Now, it will not take away certain strength, because those learnings will just really be an augmentation to what you feel is strong in the way you do things, no? Like, for example, we have been talking about connectivity all this time, and things become so impersonal, but there's no substitute really to the human touch. You know, we know that eventually people, while communicating to you online and telling you what this product and trying to sell to you the advantages of product, and even possibly giving a virtual reality tour on your product, eventually you really have to face up to him. And then in our case, in Sibulan Masters, we would like to hand that key to that particular buyer. And I'm just saying that when you have a land bank, that's really enough tool for you to look forward and see how much adjustments you can do. But at the same time, you have to bear in mind that there are learnings that we are going to appreciate now, without forgetting what are your best practices. You have to carry that forward. So I guess that's how I put that into the equation. No? Integrated mixed use, yes, but how? Well, let's see what the market calls for, and maybe ask the planners to do what's best for it.
Thanks, Mr. Soberano. Well, federal land has also been, quite popular with these integrated features. So I got office, condo, hotel, and it's a costume mall. I would like to ask Mr. Mirasol, will this be the attack of federal land moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you take a look at the way old planning was done, decades ago, you had a residential area, you had a business area, you had leisure area, you had a shopping area. Um, More and more, though, prevalent is that the integrated mixed-use community, and this is something which Federal Land is one of those developers that's a big believer in this. I think it is really proving to be a great strength in a situation like this. It is so convenient to be able you know, to live right where you work and to be able to have a short walk over to the grocery store or the pharmacy. We have two developments in particular, which sort of are great examples of this. Marco Polo in Cebu and the Grand Hyatt in BGC, having integrated hotels into your development means that, for example, our residents at the Grand Hyatt, if you're not able to do your grocery shopping, you call up the hotel and you got room service, delivered to your apartment just the way you want it. So having all of these sort of accessory uses that help make your living experience, your business experience, your shopping experience much more convenient, much safer, more comfortable, and more reliable, especially in terms of a crisis. It's really proving its worth in a situation like this.
Okay. Usually within this one is for our architect friends on board. Usually within this so-called township or mixed-use estate developments, we would see this LEED, Verde, or well-certified buildings. Moving forward with the onset of the COVID pandemic, do you think this is the way that we will be able to better adapt to the so-called new normal? And can this actually truly help cushion the blow of pandemics and other crises on real estate? Any one of you can answer. Actually, either Joel or Mr. Amado.
Okay. Like, can I say something? Okay.
Ed, Amado?
Yes, please go ahead, please.
So we'll answer. Why don't you go ahead, Amado? I'll follow up.
Thank you. Okay. There are several myths surrounding green building certifications. I'll bring it down to just a few. People think it's for big projects and it's expensive, and there are many other reasons. But actually, green certifications are very important because we need green buildings, and especially it involves energy efficiency and health for health reasons. Whether you are certified or not, we need green buildings. Now the question is certification. Why do we need them? We need green building certifications because we need a third party to certify that your products are green. Now, for most developers, a lot of the units you have, in fact, I noticed that many developers do not bother with this. Luckily, many people are still buying, but it's better if you have these certifications because you will not be accused of greenwashing. Some people might point that out. Greenwashing is intentional or unintentional claims that your building is green, even if it has no basis for being called green. So the point here is it would be better if more and more developers, more buildings will get green certifications because it will also raise the bar in a sense. People will now be asking each other, is your building certified? Are you certified? Are you green? Instead of just saying, my building is green. Who says so? I say so. My engineer says so. It's not enough. So that is why in other countries, as you know, it's very popular. We don't have to talk about all the rating systems in the world. I would suggest that whatever systems you adapt, your buildings should have some rating. I'll tell you an interesting story. I think we still have time, little. I was able to talk to a developer in the past, and very successful buildings they have. And one thing I asked him, excuse me, sir, among the buildings that you have done, would you tell me which is your most energy efficient building? He stopped and he said, I never thought of that. Now, what's the relation of this? A rating system tells you what it is, but even in-house, developers should know which is your most energy efficient building. It's like having kids, many kids. You don't know which one is the most intelligent, which one needs help, which one academically. It's like that. But this is a deeper, different level because it has deeper repercussions. So that is the purpose of the rating system, to classify your building, but just the same, building owners, developers should know how efficient or how green their buildings are. Internally, externally, I think you should do that not only for your own good, but also for the good of the country, society.
Joel, sorry, as an urban planner, we have one question here from Joey Rivas. How do we go about city and urban planning when it's more of politicians who decide on planning the projects? And also, will this mean an additional cost? Dealing with this new normal, will this mean an additional cost for the developers and the buyers as well?
Okay. Politicians, I think decisions on land use, allocation of land use, that's the purview of government. Of course, they have to be guided by the logic of sound planning and, of course, that by professional expertise. But ultimately, decisions is the purview of government. No? As far as affordability is concerned, not necessarily just because you adopt these higher standards of performance doesn't mean that they would necessarily be more expensive. If you look at the full life cycle cost, of course. So often we hear these kinds of questions that if you put a green building or the ones that are higher performance, you would incur upfront cost, but higher upfront cost. But over the long term, that cost may be offset through savings. Now, in this case, if you're talking of risk of pandemics, then what you're really weighing is the welfare of its occupants, right? So if you're able to provide these higher specifications to ensure the safety and welfare of your occupants over the long term, the benefits would also redound to you, right? Or one simple low cost approach, or low cost meaning it's not capital intensive, is providing more natural light and ventilation, for instance. It has both health and energy benefits to the occupants. So something like that does not necessarily incur significant costs, but it's you can, of course, now make that a value proposition for your products to attract buyers and therefore differentiate yourself as well.
Thanks, Architect Joel. Yes, Tech, I think there's another question raised here for our developers. So let me start with Mr. Soberano. One question raised, aside from the typical office, residential, and retail features of an integrated community or township, what other features do you think should be within an integrated community or estate?
We have to differentiate these kinds of uses that you want to mix depending on the sizes of the land that you have. So if you're talking about township type and it's a commercial, in nature. Like you could probably uh, have a township which is similar to what we have in Cebu IT Park, for example. So all those features of having residential condos, office condos, and even a mall is there. But there is also that element of having hospitality accommodation like hotels, and that is very essential because that's where you try to gather all of these visitors. They may have certain functions to attend to in a township like that. And you can even have another kind of use. I mentioned about the industrial estate, no, and definitely depending on its location, on how close it is to urban center, you can put a lot of commercial into it, no, and and you have to look at on what this particular community need. What is the absence here, but there is a strong potential. Uh, Maybe a sports arena, a coliseum type, that's also very possible. Now, if you talk of a smaller uh, one one hectare, for example, you can actually mix use that, but you also have to be, depending on where it is and how much it costs you to buy that land, and if there are any restrictions also from the authorities or from the local government unit that you are in terms of density, then definitely you will be able to combine again all of these uses, residential, offices, a hotel, which could be a mix of condo and a condo hotel. So there are so much flexibility that is at hand, but all of that will have to balance out on what is there. No, what is also competition doing in that area? No, and looking at definitely how much returns can you have, especially the kind of pricing that you will have to impute into that. No, another kind of township, I may just add, is of course the residential, purely residential, but you would like to position, if it is located along a major thoroughfare or a highway, you want to position a commercial on the front, no? And that particular residential township could be, for me, if I were to have that kind of opportunity, which I do have, no, in some of the places that I'm in, I would position definitely for the economic and mid market, which to me is a market that will never dry up to now. We know all the backlog story, and that's why my interest is I'm still very upbeat about this particular segment of our real estate spectrum. I love to continue pursuing this. I'm only in 15 cities now, but I think that's one product that can still get penetrated on so many other cities in Bismin.
Sorry, if I may just add, Joey already mentioned that apart from offices, residential, do you think it's also with what's been going on right now? Do you think it's also necessary to add like a primary care facilities or educational institutions? Because I believe some of the township developers now already have this feature. So would you agree that it's now high time to really implement this?
Thank you for mentioning the tech. Speaking of the obvious, that has become very. That's more of a need now. No, it has become even more pronounced. That's why, if I look at my township master plan in Davao Global Township, we haven't really concretized hospital. No, and right now, hey, why not? That's something that really gives a light bulb there, no? And we have also to, even on smaller developments that's purely residential. For example, you have say a 10-hectare residential community mid market. You might want to put up a clinic there, and that should be helped out by nurses. Yeah, so you need to create that strong property management team that really extend a lot of goodwill and service to people, especially in the light that health is really what people are very concerned with, and they'd like to see, am I protected in that area, and what is this property management company doing? No, are they very conscious about sanitation? Are the garbage collection really there? All these elements
Mhm.
are put together, and definitely this thing about medical centers, hospitals, and clinics should now be part of the equation.
Okay,
Tom,
great.
sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry,
thanks.
I just have a follow-up. This one, Tom, is from Jello Ramos. How does the new normal affect the cost of development and construction costs, given the regard for social distancing and limitation on movements? Will this resort to longer construction time, and will it affect costs? Will the space person requirement increase, therefore more materials needed to be used?
You know,
That's a long question.
okay,
Uh,
Sorry.
okay, go ahead.
so you know, okay. First, we don't know exactly how long, whether or not there will be new guidelines on, say, density requirements or density limits on the number of people per unit. Now, if that does happen, that means we will have to build more square meterage per person. Definitely, you cannot have that without raising costs. No? Now, um, if construction times have to be stretched, that will also result in increased costs, because basically you're paying people to spend considerably more time on building something that they could have built over a shorter amount of time. So if you were the general contractor, and if you could have done, two projects during that time, you wouldn't want to. You probably couldn't afford to keep your business going if you simply charge the same amount of money. Now, again, I would caution people, not to look at the world um, exclusively in a ECQ or GCQ point of view. Even this um, will be lifted in time. No? Now, again, it doesn't mean that we won't see any changes going forward. I'm sure we will. Although right now it's probably uh, too soon to be able to accurately predict exactly what all of those changes will be and how that might impact on pricing. Let me also add to what Joe was mentioning, and I agree 100% with what he said. The larger your land bank, larger your estate, the more you will be able to do things from a efficient cost point of view. The more you will be able to integrate all the possible uses into a community like that. I think one thing that may be that is showing itself to be a great advantage right now is the amount of open space that a particular community might have, and the amount of flexible space within that. So, for example, multi-purpose stands or multi-purpose fields, which can be directed to one use or another depending on the needs of the market or the needs of the time. Now, it's
Hey,
difficult to do this, you know, uh, from an economic point of view, because the cost of land for open space is the same cost of land that you would be developing something else on. So we have to be able to find a way to kind of make that easier for developers to do, because the motivation to develop, to get high development efficiency out of land will always be there if land costs are high.
thanks, Mr. Mirasol, for that very interesting and insightful response. Now, Tech, let me ask our architects now. As you know, the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us a lot. And previously, we were so engrossed with the structural integrity, with the location, and amenities of property developments. But I want to ask our architects, what other future-proofing measures do you think should the developers consider going forward? Let me start with architect Joel.
Am I on? All right.
Yep.
I think what the crisis underscores is a need for resiliency in general, not just resiliency in pandemics, but all other shocks that are bound to happen. Mixed use, I mean, it's mentioned a couple of times already. The diversity of activity is one way to address resiliency. Homogeneous developments tend to be less resilient. So bringing different uses closer to each other and maybe expanding what is often cited as live, work, play. So maybe you include health, learning, food production, maybe small scale manufacturing, recreation, open space, all of this as diverse as possible, just like a typical city. One reason for that is it's not just bringing all of these activities closer to each other within the reach of the consumer, but it also actually makes the space more efficient because from a time of use point of view, the more diverse the set of activities you have, say in a township, then it takes less cost to provide the infrastructure. You're able to optimize the utilization of that infrastructure because there's varying peak times of the utilization and many other benefits, right? So it's also more land efficient that way, and it reduces risk compared to a single-use development. So that's one way, and these are not new concepts. It's probably just reinforcing these older and tested concepts.
Architect Amado?
I think this term of future-proofing is a relatively new phrase that has come up, but it actually means the same thing, which is resilience, self-reliance, self-autonomy. It's time to go back to how we go about our business. We had a study, we were invited to make a study together with IFC World Bank after the Tacloban disaster. And it's very interesting to see the place was really all wiped out, as we all know, except very interesting things came up. One or two structures were standing intact, almost without any damage, no major structural damage. And we found out what's the reason. In the end, we found out most people did not follow the code. In other words, they were not following the code to a large extent makes the building self-reliant. Plus, with the new green building code now, if we can incorporate that, which is being more energy efficient, you have more renewable energy in place, this will make your building more resilient, more self-reliant. Imagine this, multiply this on a bigger area, you have a big community. Then you have a whole area that is more reliant on its own sources without minimal external help. This is what it's about. It's going back, I think, what we're discussing is going back to the basics which we all have taken for granted because we think that it is not necessary. We have always something new coming up everywhere in construction, in the internet. And getting down to the basic means taking care of our building, taking care of making our buildings and our communities green and healthy. That is what food-proofing, future-proofing is to me. And adaptable, of course. Adaptable structures can also be part of this. And reusing buildings for other purposes.
Thank you, Architect Amado. I think we have time for one question, and we save the best for last. For the developers, do you think this COVID-19 pandemic will push prices of properties lower?
Well, from my point of view, if I were the buyer of a land bank, I wish that would happen. But of course, if I am now a developer who's trying to sell some of my inventories, I hope it won't. So it's really double edged in that sense. But looking at how prices would go here or there, it's going to be a bit soft, and it's not going to be. It's going to be very temporary because even right now, the dips that we are noticing or experiencing is not really that significant. No? And one thing going for us developers is that uh, price is only as good as what your cost is. We know that, no, and that's why we're seeing a lot of interesting opportunities there. That must supplies are actually going down, no? In the cost of the raw materials or construction materials, because with practically not much buying out there, uh, these materials are going down with so much of inventories that they want to get rid of, no, and and that will probably be an opportunity for us to do some pricing adjustments, no, because that way if your cost is a bit lower, you can definitely lower your price and still have your same profit margin targets, no, attained. So these are things that we feel that we would anticipate. I do foresee that happening really on the housing side, because even for me as a developer, I want to also feel that we want things to be also affordable and reachable to them. No, so and I guess also with lesser demand, as long as you can afford it, as a developer on a particular project, you may have to look at price adjustments seriously.
Mr. Mirasol, comments,
Uh,
please.
uh, I think what you're going to see is probably different reactions from different developers depending on two things. Now, one, the strength of your balance sheet. Are you financially strong enough to kind of weather the crisis, which again is temporary. So some companies will be better positioned to be able to handle that than others. So that's one consideration. The other consideration is the strength of the product that you are selling. So if your product happens to be quite superior, its demand could even be stronger in light of a situation like this. The probability that demand will go down is probably small. So if you're fortunate enough as a developer to be in a situation where you have both a strong balance sheet and a strong product, I don't think you're going to see a lot of price softening. But I do think what's going to happen is that the market will be demanding three basic things from all developers going forward. One, as Architect Amado mentioned, an emphasis on healthier buildings. For our part, we're already looking at the installation of UV light based systems to purify air conditioning systems in some of our office buildings. Um, I think the market is also going to be interested in looking for residential units and office units that provide more space. Now, again, if you're going to be under lockdown, you might as well try to be as comfortable as possible. And the third thing, which Joe had mentioned earlier, is going to be an emphasis on property management. So the better that you are able to ensure that you can keep everything sanitized, you can provide security, your housekeeping is up to spec, and your residents have basically nothing to worry about. I think these are the three things which the market will be expecting going forward.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Mr. Mirasol. As much as we want to accommodate more questions today, we see in the viewers that a lot of people are asking a lot of questions. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for our second onboard event. We cannot thank our speakers and moderators for sharing their valuable expertise and insights with us. We feel that after hearing what they have to say, the real estate industry is still well poised to navigate the bumpy road ahead. We will be closing the online discussion with closing remarks coming from our speakers and moderators. Let's start off with the property section editor of the Philippine Daily Inquirer, Ms. Tech Samaniego. Tech?
First of all, I just would like to thank all our panelists for today for sharing their time and making this forum really insightful and interesting. Now to my fellow industry stakeholders, to all the brokers, the developers, I just want to again appeal that we should keep the faith, and no matter how uncertain the times may be, real estate will remain strong. We will move forward, we will stand up, because we are a basic necessity. Housing is a very, very basic necessity. So no matter what happens, we will rise and we will move forward. Mabuhay po at magandang hapon sa lahat.
Okay, thank you so much, Tech. Next, we have the Senior Research Manager of Colliers International, Mr. Joey Roy Bondo.
Thank you, Pat. A very interesting discussion that we had this afternoon. Just to wrap up a few sentences, a few insights that I got from our developers. So Mr. Mirasol, of course, highlighted the need to further differentiate with your integrated communities, a look at incorporating health as well as education facilities. Mr. Soberano, of course, saying that industrial will also be a major part of these integrated communities going forward. And of course, our architect friends who also mentioned that there's a greater need to future-proof projects moving forward. It's not just location, or the amenities that we have right now, but it's not just a status quo. We need to acting or moving or implementing actions, you'll be late in the game already. Overall, we're seeing a greater demand for these ecologically sustainable buildings. In fact, from 2020 to 2022, 30% of new office space will be LEED certified. And for these LEED certified buildings that will be completed this year, 2020, 70% has been pre-released already. And our team has been very busy helping clients look for these LEED certified buildings in Makati, Ortigas, Cebu, and Davao. And we see this trend going forward. What I can conclude, it's not all gloom and doom. There are opportunities in every uncertainty, and we need to keep this in mind as we navigate through with this tumultuous times.
Okay, thank you so much, Joey. It's nice to have you again here and on board. Now let's hear from the President and COO of Federal Land Incorporated, Mr. Thomas Mirasol.
Well, first, I'd like to thank the organizers for putting this forum together. It's been a very, I guess, invaluable experience for us to share our ideas. I have to say that looking back as to where we've come from during the ECQ and looking forward, I think we as a country have a lot to be proud of about the way we have addressed the situation. Clearly, a lot of people have been going through a lot of challenges, and some will continue to go through challenges, over the coming weeks and possibly months. But I am very, very proud of how we as a nation and as a people have kind of come together to find a way to navigate the situation. And I think our response can be seen as a model for the rest of the world. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Next, we have the Chairman, President, and CEO of Cebu Landmasters Incorporated, Mr. Jose Soberano.
I like what Lex mentioned about homes are real necessities, and we are having this forum virtual, and this is because it is out of necessity. And we know that necessity is really the mother of all inventions, right? That's why at no time do we have that need to be connected, no? And we are doing that at a distance. And can you imagine that will become the new normal? I cannot see that persisting. Eventually, society will have to go back when people will be coming together, and feeling the human touch, and also the face-to-face interaction. These are things that we will really be missing a lot, but I'm sure we're going to go back there because man is not really the purpose man is not really to be alone, right? I mean, we're not supposed to be isolated. That's why I think there's the global community will come about. No, will come up with a solution definitely, and from the learnings that we have, the difficulties we have, is something that we will have a very strong resolve that this will never happen again. No, that's why basically there's a lot of optimism now. There's going to be a lot of easing up, and we're going to be going back gradually, but ultimately we will come together, and we will overcome this.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Soberano. Let's hear now from the Vice Chairman of Philippine Green Building Initiative, Architect Amado De Jesus. Mr. De Jesus?
Yeah, okay. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me and for joining this very interesting. And we're all learning from this. That's how I feel. I must congratulate the developers for transforming our country to what it is now. It's a very, very beautiful, robust country because of the communities that you build. Now, the challenge we have, I think we can continue the collaboration. They say that the pandemic, sorry to say, Mr. Subirano, but I don't think the pandemic will be, there might be another pandemic coming. So we have to be ready for that. That's why we are preparing our buildings and our communities to handle another one. I'd just like to say that I think the closer collaboration that architects, designers, and developers are doing, I think we can get over this challenge. Whenever it comes, I hope that we will be stronger and we will solve this in a cohesive, collective manner, as we have done in the past. Thank you for inviting me.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. De Jesus. Let's move to our last speaker, the founder and principal of Joel Luna Planning and Design, Architect Joel Luna.
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me as part of this very informative and engaging forum. We've been talking about future proofing, but I think one of the first things we have to confront is what is that future we want to achieve, to attain. And so far, what we have been discussing is the hardware side of property development. Let us not forget that there's a big software side to development, and particularly it became very apparent during this crisis. For instance, we talked about property development and property management. So which companies implemented early and good sanitary protocols at the start of the crisis, not just during the ECQ? Which companies exercised care for their customers? And which companies looked after the welfare of their employees during this whole period? How companies and management behave during bad times is a reflection of how they will behave during good times. So this is a time wherein there's a flight to quality. It's also a time for the market, who will be very cautious and be very selective and discriminating to go for brands that stand for more than just pushing products to them. So I think as we try and look at how do we future-proof the new normal, we will have to, I guess, try and see what we have observed the past few weeks. We have seen a very different level of cooperation, of sharing, of localization. And we have seen big companies trying to address issues of inequality. We have seen individuals make huge sacrifices amid the inadequacy of our systems. And we have seen cleaner air. We have seen traffic-free roads and a lot of good things because of as a result of the quarantine period. And hopefully a lot of these good things become part of this new normal, that we will constantly have clean air, that our developments would try to reduce the amount of traffic on our streets, that we will try to combat inequity, and the big companies will try to share more of the resources to those who need it most. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Luna. That wraps it up for our panel's closing messages. We would also like to take this opportunity to inform our viewers that the Philippine Daily Inquirer is offering a 30-day free trial of its digital edition, Inquirer Plus. For more information, you may visit inquirer.com.ph/Inquirer Plus. Thank you once again for being part of On Board, the online boardroom discussions presented by Philippine Daily Inquirer and Icon Executive Asia. We would like to thank our speakers for today, as well as our generous sponsors, Medicard Philippines, Ortigas Land, Mega World Corporation, SunTrust Properties Incorporated, and Cebu Landmasters Incorporated. Thank you as well to the organizations that have partnered with us, Inquirer.net, Inquirer Property, Colliers International, Icon Executive Asia, Wong & Bernstein Advisory Group, and Shoppertainment Live. Stay tuned for more online boardroom discussions. Once again, my name is Pat Soyal from Icon Executive Asia, and thank you for being on board.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Keep safe.